William Pryor, federal judge, but also a former politician. He was the Attorney General of Alabama. If you look at the pros and cons here, this is a little bit of his biography, but if you look at the pros and cons here, see if we can get that. Here we go. Here we go. Get that thing running. So first of all, this is what the right has been waiting for. They left this seat vacant for the entire campaign. They wanted a conservative. This guy, very outspoken on social issues. Here's the con. On a scale of 1 to 10, this fight would be an 11. There's all sorts of ammunition here for Democrats to go after. This would rile up Democrats.
That was a clip before Trump ended up nominating Neil Gorsuch to the vacant Supreme Court seat at the start of his presidency in 2017. But Pryor was on that three-person shortlist, and rumor has it that if Trump wins again, that guy could probably be his Supreme Court nominee. And he's terrifying. He's basically a theocrat. He thinks American life should be run like Saudi Arabia or like Iran, like a theocracy, except that his theocracy desires are, of course, right-wing Christianity. He's from Alabama. He's far right by even their standards. So yeah, his extremist views on separation of church and state have come into the light recently because he presided over this case last week and was especially nuts. Pryor's dubious view of the role of religion under our constitutional system was on display again last week in the Florida case. He wrote a long, rambling dissent in a case that needed no such thing. A dissent that so jolted a fellow conservative judge on the panel that she felt compelled to write a concurrence aimed at diluting Pryor's message that religious freedom ought to extend more fully to jury deliberations. Well, that's foreboding. Basically, the case centered around the Sixth Amendment, which involves the right to a fair trial, and it was a decently high-profile case at that. It surrounded former Representative Corinne Brown, a Democrat, who was found guilty of fraud because she was basically running a sham charity, and the juror in the case was the problem in this case. As soon as deliberations in Brown's trial began, one juror told his fellow jurors that a higher being had told him that she was not guilty of all charges. Juror 13 told the judge that he had indeed received instructions from his Father in heaven. The Holy Spirit, he told the judge, had told him the defendant was not guilty, and Juror 13, in turn, had shared that information with his fellow jurors at the start of deliberations. The trial judge promptly dismissed the juror from the case and replaced him with an alternate juror. Brown appealed the judge's removal of Juror 13 after she was convicted. So basically, this was a strategy by Brown because she was convicted, and her legal team didn't want her to be. Simple enough. Replacing that juror, I don't think is controversial at all, but to Pryor, very much so. In his 15-page dissent, Pryor argued that Brown's trial judge had discriminated against Juror 13 by removing him from service after misconstruing the import of the juror's religious statements. Upholding the removal of Juror 13, Judge Pryor predicted, would give lawyers a tool to target and eliminate certain demographics from jury service. Yeah, you guessed it. He went on to compare it to discrimination against Black people in jury situations. So that's a crazy opinion. That's a crazy opinion. The juror was telling other people that a divine God had said that the defendant was not guilty, was telling other jurors. And this guy, that he could bring that kind of opinion to the Supreme Court if Trump wins. This goes to show that, God, even if Biden's the nominee, we got to turn out. Judicial appointments are huge, and they affect people on a scale that isn't fully understood by a lot of people because it doesn't make national news. But Republicans have been dominant in their judicial appointments, and the fact that there are so many Republican conservative judges making decisions that affect people's lives around the country, it's terrible. It's terrible, and we need to reverse that course very quickly.